Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I also am going to do, I don't know how to do this in 3 minutes. What would you do to balance the state budget and maintain services? It's might take a little more, but we can try it. So perhaps the best way, I told you about the 3 pathways, right? So the first one being focusing on essential services that are true to our progressive values, and the second being the bottom-up economic development that doesn't focus on the top 1%, but on entrepreneurs and bringing up a lot of the votes. So I'll give you the West Hartford example. When I took office back in 2001 as mayor, we had a real bad fiscal crisis in town. The Republicans, the so-called fiscal conservatives, have done a lot of things irresponsibly because they never wanted to raise taxes even smoothly to meet our services. We were put on the watch list by the bond rating agencies. For 30 years, AAA bond rating, we were on the watch list. We had to all of a sudden make our pension payments. We needed a 3rd middle school. So what did? We got everybody together. The town side, the board side, business, civic groups, labor, management, and we looked at our town and said, what can we do to preserve the quality of our schools, our senior services, our front yard services? And we literally reinvented the way that we did produce our services. We were able to combine different departments on the town and board side. We were able to deliver our healthcare services in a different way with the cooperation of our workers and of our unions, because we brought people together, we listened, and we created practical solutions to the problems that we were facing. In the midst of it, we had to make pension payments. We did that. We knew we couldn't kick that can down the road or else it would come back to bite us. We were able to get ourselves off the watch list, to start building a 3rd middle school, to restore our fund balance and make it through that. Now, the town government is, of course, less complex than a state government. But we did the same thing. My deputy, now the Commissioner of Consumer Protection, Glastonbury resident Michelle Siegel here, we took those lessons, brought people together, and in an agency that over several years had a 25% decrease in the number of employees, but given more to do, like the cutting-edge medical marijuana program, we were able to use these lessons to get it done. That next piece, bottom-up economic development. The 2 things that started the catalyst of West Hartford Center and our economic development, allowing outdoor dining, relaxing, or making it easier for people to park at restaurants. Bottom up, knowing when to get out of the way to be able to track that private development. Then we had 2 boarded up, polluted car dealerships. Prospectively, we made a grid and a road system. We changed the zoning so there could be more density, cash flow for developers that were interested in master planning that area. That resulted in Blueback Square expanding our tax base, creating jobs in building and the businesses that are there now, and creating a neighborhood where millennials, where people want to come and live, so that we have places for the workforce of today and tomorrow to be able to live a great life.
When you said you were going to fix the state budget, you were going to get my vote right there. I'm going to try education generically, and from a couple of perspectives. One is a mayor who has a city with the largest school districts of 23,000 students who speak over 50 different languages. And the challenges that we have in a state with, I think, some of the best schools and some of the schools that have probably some of the greatest needs. And I can tell you that one of the most important challenges for any of us on a local level, on a state level, or in any level of commitment to public service is to understand and recognize the needs of quality education in a public education system, primary and secondary, and also I want to talk about higher education. When you talk about the challenges and how do you fix the whether it's the Shep decision or subsequent decisions, I look at examples that go to try and meet the challenges. Whether it's how do you reduce classroom size so that a teacher can have a much more manageable percentage of ratio between student and pupil. How do you get to the point in every city and town where you have universal preschool? How do you look at and continue to increase the rate of your students that graduate and go on for an opportunity to go on to higher learning to college and reduce the dropout rates? Certainly the challenges that we face in many of our public schools in our big cities. The best examples that I've experienced were some of our schools that we made some of the best, whether it's a regional, I'll use our regional agriculture school, where you learn marine biology, and students from some of the most affluent neighborhoods across the borders from Bridgeport come by choice and go to school in Bridgeport, or the magnet schools. Those seem to be the examples, the bright lights of success that I think we need to build on when we look at the public schools. That any of us that want to put as a lower tier issue, the commitment to public education is going to miss the mark. What we need to do in Connecticut and moving it forward. From a personal perspective, I come from a family with 8 children, 6 of which were pushing tuitions in either college or law school at one time. My family said, no matter what you do, you're going to come out of this thing with an education, and the rest of your life is yours. I have 3 children now, one who just graduated like I did from UConn, the daughter who's going on to get her PA. I have a son who's in a small private college in upstate New York who tells me he's majoring in baseball because they gave him a little money to go there. But I also have one who's still in high school. He's 16 years old. He actually would have been here tonight. He helped me when I wanted to run for mayor again. He said, Dad, if you think you can make a contribution again to help Bridgeport, you should do it. And he stood by me at the age of 15 and went door to door with me. He's getting his driver's test tomorrow, so I figured let me leave him alone. Some people might think he might be a better driver than me than some that I've had in the past. My point is this, that for them, not just because they're my children or your children, but they're our future, whatever city, town they live in. He has a different perspective than his brothers and sisters. He's saying, Dad, am I really going to push? You really want to push those high college tuitions even if it's UConn? Do I want to go to college? Think about the cost-benefit analysis that you get buried in hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I'm not one who sits there and tells you that I'm going to provide free college tuition because I don't do that. I've balanced budgets, continue to do it in the most difficult times. We get our state budget in order, I'll talk about that in the next question. I think we need to continue the commitment, primary and secondary, make sure that we continue to have the greatest higher learning system that we can in the state of Connecticut. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to address the question, how can the state be more successful in the area of economic development and job creation? And that's obviously a forward-looking question, and it's going to take forward-looking, collaborative, results-driven leadership to move forward in that regard. You know, too many people since I started my campaign have asked me to lay blame. And you know what? I've answered that question and say, I'll let others waste their time assessing blame. My military, my corporate experience has taught me to jump in, to take challenges head on. I'm here to take responsibility for our future. And so that's what I did. From day one, announcing my exploratory campaign in East Hartford at Augie and Ray's, my native town, I said my first, second, and third priorities will be our state's economy. I said it again when I declared my candidacy for governor a couple of weeks ago in my hometown now of Hebron, when I said it's going to be a top priority, and when I also released my economic plan for moving our state forward. Really, it's going to come down to leadership and moving that forward. There's no magic wands, there's no overnight solutions, it's a long-term plan. And let me talk to you about a couple of the issues in there. First is putting the laser focus on our state's economy that it deserves. You know, here in the wintertime in Connecticut, when we have a major snowstorm like we did a couple of weeks ago, our state leaders gather in the Operations Center in the Army in Hartford, and they put that laser focus on the snowstorm to see our state through the storm. Well, we have an economic climate that's in crisis. This is our storm, and we need the same laser focus on our economy, and that's why I've called for an Economic Operations Center to include Democrats and Republicans and independents, business and industry and labor all at the table, seeing our state through the short term, but also planning for that long term to launch our state on an upward trajectory. Second, I talked about our Department of Economic and Community Development. We need some modernization, we need to build the system in that department. They do some good things, but we need to do better things. As I travel the state and talk to business leaders all across the state, they find that it's not as flexible as it could be. It's not as innovative as it could be. And so we need to make our DECD a partner in the process, a driver of economic growth. I've talked about small business, encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit that's been in our state going back to Pratt & Whitney when it was a startup. It's grown into global prominence. We need to do that same thing with incubators placed across the state. Scaling up our existing companies. You know what? We didn't make the Amazon list. Forget about Amazon. Let's scale up the companies that we have right here in our state. We have over 6,000 technology firms, 10 jobs each is 60,000 jobs. We can identify those companies and help them grow. Engaging with our larger employers on a continuous basis, not just when they're threatening to leave. Regulatory modernization, getting regulations that are old and outdated and in the way of growing business and growing jobs needs to happen. Tax innovation. Finding ways to encourage our businesses to grow right here in Connecticut. Finding ways to keep our young people and our seniors right here in Connecticut so that we can not have the out-migration but have a growth in our population. I'm excited about moving our state forward. We can do it with the right leadership. We can launch our state on an upward trajectory, and we can be the tops in the nation within 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. So, whatever we need to do to grow our economy is going to not be just a magic bullet. It's going to take a lot of buckshot. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. So let me just give you a few ideas that I have to grow our economy and uplift every family in the state. So my top priority, in addition to passing a budget on time that's balanced, would be this: to put a bill on the desk of the legislature that would require pay equity for women. Because right now, women in Connecticut make 78 cents for every dollar that men make. And so if we want to uplift every family, and by the way, 40% of the families in Connecticut are headed by women major breadwinners. So we should change our labor laws, as other states have done, to make them more transparent. And also to get rid of that question, what did you make at your last job? Because that institutionalizes discrimination. So pay equity is one thing we can do in Connecticut that would get our economy going for every family. I'm the daughter of a small business owner. I grew up on a farm in Middletown, and my dad, who's 96, still lives on our farm. And that's where my passion for small business came. And one thing I know, having spent the last 6 years helping more than 80 companies create thousands of good-paying jobs, is we need to support the businesses that are already here, the small businesses that are committed to Connecticut because their founders are here. We need to support them from the ground up. So let me just give you one example of a business that I helped. I helped a company called Thermax in West Haven, Connecticut. And when I started helping them, they had 10 full-time jobs. Or they have 88 full-time people, and they sell their products all over the world. And they have great, good-paying manufacturing jobs. We need a governor that's going to focus on supporting small businesses. Infrastructure investment is also key to creating really good jobs. Because if we put tolls back on our roads in Connecticut, we would be creating $60 billion of revenue for the state. So that's over 20 years, $3 billion in revenue that we could be investing in repairing our aging roads and bridges, creating good jobs, creating economic development. That is also very key. It's also very important if we want to revitalize our economy, to revitalize our cities. Because if we want our young people to stay in Connecticut, oops, sorry, that stopped. Thank you.
So I'm going to take a question about economic development and jobs. And you guys have been here for a while, so I want to give you some specifics, because I think you deserve them. So, we talk about Connecticut as the insurance capital of the world. But what we are sitting in right now, we're right here, is an advanced manufacturing capital of the world. we have to recognize we've got Pratt & Whitney in East Hartford. We've got Electric Boat down on the shore. And not only that, each one of those has hundreds of suppliers that are located all around here. You got Habco right here. You got, Oxford Performance Materials. They're in advanced manufacturing generally, including medical technology over in Manchester. This is an area where we know there is growth. They've got long-term contracts, especially Pratt & EP and their supply chain. They're projecting thousands of jobs to be grown in the next couple of years, in the next decade. But we are not positioning ourselves to take advantage of that, because what they say is that they don't have the workforce to fill those jobs. So there's some very specific things we can do if we don't want to lose them. Number one, I think we got to focus back on VOTEC. I think we've completely lost the focus on vocational and technical education as a path, not just to a job, but to a career. And a lot of those jobs in advanced manufacturing, they don't take a 4-year degree. And you can make a very good living for your family if you get those jobs. Number two, for those advanced manufacturing jobs that take a little bit more than that, we need to build specific programs at our community colleges and our state college and university system that are designed to prepare students for exactly the jobs that are available. And again, we know what they are because they already know what contracts they have. The other thing we need to do is make sure that the companies that are here are looking at Connecticut as the place they're going to grow the jobs of the future. And so I want to talk about what we've done in Hartford. Just a few weeks ago, Stanley Black & Decker, a company that's been here for 175 years, set up a Center of Excellence, Advanced Manufacturing Center of Excellence, plus an accelerator where they're identifying and investing in the most promising startups in advanced manufacturing, and they're doing it right here. We partnered, public-private partnership, with 5 of our insurance companies to set up an InsurTech accelerator where they are identifying and investing the startups of the future, the startups that are going to change the industry for the future. The work they've been doing in Silicon Valley, now they're doing here. But let me say this last piece. If we want all that to be successful, we have to do 2 other things. We have to make sure that our cities are vibrant and strong. I bet you if you took a poll in this room of where kids and grandkids are living, a lot of them are living in cities. Not necessarily huge cities like New York, but they've got to be vibrant, energetic, and active so we can keep that young talent here. And number 2, transportation. I'm glad to see how many people support tolls. I think we're crazy to be one of the only states on the eastern seaboard without tolls. I think we need to expand bus service east of the river. But I want to say this. I know this is not about this region, but it's about this state. If we install tolls and we partly use that revenue to bond fast, high-performance rail from New Haven to New York City, it changes the game for half of our state in a way that produces revenue that can lift up the entire state. Those are a few specifics of what I think we can do to grow jobs and economic growth in this state.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about balancing the budget. 20 years ago, we were a state where businesses and families would flock to from Massachusetts and New York. In a very short amount of time, that trend has reversed. And all our great assets are still here. We're still geographically ideally located in the epicenter of the Northeast corridor where 20% of the country's GDP is conducted. We have great educational institutions. We have great educated workforce. But all the leadership and all the experienced leadership in the world could not stop that trend from happening. And I believe that we were not focused on the right things, which is to expand our industry base and expand our tax base. And I think the only way out of this pickle is to bring more revenue into our state by attracting businesses here, making it an environment for families to thrive and businesses to thrive. And so everything that we do in government should be focused on that so that we can create those well-paying jobs for our middle class and working class families. So my plan, which is a 3-tier plan, and you heard about the public-private partnership to encourage college graduates to stay in our state by alleviating their loans, and that money that they would have spent towards loans, hopefully they will put towards a down payment to a home. Studies show that if a college graduate stays in the state for 5 years, that they end up becoming permanent residents, and now we've expanded our tax base. The other thing that businesses, and I've conducted a lot of roundtables with small and large businesses look for, is infrastructure and transportation. So tolls, absolutely, we are at a competitive disadvantage with all of our states Connecticut is the second most traveled highways in the country, and half of that traffic is from out of state. They put wear and tear on our roads, they pollute our environment, they don't pay a dime. It's about $1 billion of revenue almost that we're leaving on the table. Imagine what we can do with that money. Also, what businesses have told me and families is that when they need to go to an international airport, because small and large businesses are pretty global at this point, we don't have an airport. So we engaged in a public-private partnership to expand Bradley Airport. A lot of cities across the country have gone from zero to hero: Atlanta, Denver, Pittsburgh, Austin. International airport. It will do wonders for business to set up. And lastly, we have to invest in our urban cores. Young folks these days and retired folks want convenient urban living. We need intercity transit. We need affordable housing. And we need strong educational public schools in our urban core. So those things are essential, and I really do think if we make the right investments and we market it, and that's where 20 years of private sector experience comes into play, we market it to not only to folks within our and businesses within our state, but all over our country and all over the globe. We can really bring those businesses in and put our state back on track to be leaders with economic growth and creating jobs. Thank you.
Our second round of questions, and our first question is going to be Dita.
Great. I will talk about how I am 100% committed to democratic values. Look, we as Democrats, we have a lot at stake. We have lost 50 seats in our legislature over the last 10 years because what the Republicans do is play the blame game very well. And so by saying, the reason why our economy has dropped is we're growing at 1.2%, the rest of the country is a full percentage higher. So there's real data there, and they play the blame game very well. And so I think, in order to preserve our great democratic values, which I am wholeheartedly, support, I was elected unanimously as the vice chair of the Democratic Party last year. I, like everybody here, was shocked and overwhelmed with the Trump victory, and I knew absolutely that it was time to lean in, not lean back, and double up on our efforts, and which is why I ran for that position. But what became clear to me as I traveled the state in the short period of time that I was the vice chair is the amount of Democrats who are disheartened by the future of Connecticut. And that if they weren't going to show up to the polls, well, we were in a very, very dangerous predicament. So we really need leaders who can be bulletproof in terms of what Republicans do best, which is to play the blame game, and also have an economic message. And I think that's where we went wrong, in the presidential election last year. We have to have an economic message. Now, I know better than anybody that Democrats are the ones who really care about everybody and anybody, as we should. As a 6-year-old, growing up in a not so sort of a racist community, I remember trying to find the best geographic way to get to school where the least amount of kids would call me names and tell me to go back to where I came from. At 10 years old, I was shelving cans in my mom's friend's deli store because we needed the income and I wanted the extra, $20 that I would make after 10 hours of work. Then went on to work in a public library, shelving books, and then as a bank teller. But I had two things, because actually I was born and raised in Canada. I've been here since 1995. Access to good education and health care. And that was all the safety net that I needed to reach my full potential. And I was able to break barriers with those basic needs. And that's what I want to do for Connecticut. Break barriers for everyone in our state, promote our democratic values, but we have to get there first, and we need an economic message. And that's why I think that I'm a good candidate for, and why I'm exploring for governor, because I won't be a victim of that blame game, and I will put that economic message forward that will empower everyone in our state. Thank you.
Mike, just so we can plan, are we doing closing statements at the end?
We're going to do one last question, and then we want to be able to have the audience have some time with you.
Okay. So I'm going to actually take two quick questions that I think are linked, and then very brief closing. As you can hear from the last answer, I'm really optimistic about what we can do in the state of Connecticut. But I do want to just touch on two things that are crises that we need to tackle aside from the fiscal one. Number one, crumbling foundations. This is an underappreciated problem in the state of Connecticut, and it's especially big east of the river in the towns, many of which are represented here. There are potentially as many as 30,000 homes that are affected. We don't really know. But here's what we do know. Even if it's a fraction of that, that's going to take a huge hit, not just on families, and not just on those who have spent a lifetime paying down a mortgage and now find themselves with a home that may have little value. It's also going to be a fiscal crisis for the towns. So I'm glad that the state set up a captive insurance company in their last budget, that they funded it with $20 million a year. But here's something that's really important. To take advantage of that, people need to be able to test their homes. So it's really important that future budgets include funding to allow for the testing of homes, because that's how you're going to know who actually needs to make a claim. The second one that I want to talk about is the growth crisis of opioid addiction. This is nationwide. It is a true epidemic. We see it and feel it every day in my city, but we see it, you see it and feel it every day in every single community. So I'm again going to give you something specific. I don't think we've come anywhere close to tackling this crisis with the resources it deserves. Donald Trump said that he was going to do something about it in the presidential election. I haven't seen one single minute spent on it at the federal level. One of the issues in this race is the legalization of recreational marijuana. I support that, and I have for a long time, because I think it's partly a matter of safety. If you regulate it, you can make sure that it's safer. And when all our neighbors are doing it anyway, it's just going to be common sense. But I think a significant portion of that revenue should be going to addiction treatment for those who are struggling with opioid abuse. That's the only way we're going to be able to get even close to the resources that deserves. Now, I know I'm kind of going outside the rules a little bit because it's for one question apiece, but I just want to say one last thing. There's a lot at stake in this race for our towns and cities and for our state as a whole. But I think there's a lot at stake for our country in this race. And I think we need a governor who is willing to stand up loudly and strongly against the Trump administration. I've been proud as mayor to stand up to the bullying of the Trump administration on immigration, and as they've tried to bully sanctuary cities. I've been proud to stand up and pass ordinances to protect a woman's right to choose as the Trump administration looks to defund Planned Parenthood. They plan to stand up and advocate for continuing teen pregnancy prevention funding as they look to cut it. And one thing that I'm really proud of is that I think Connecticut has been at the forefront of standing up for the values that we as Democrats, I think, all embrace, but they're not just Democratic values, they're American values that are under assault right now, and we have to stand strong because so much is at stake. Thank you very much.
I'd like to talk about healthcare because it's important to every family and it's important to our economy. We have in our country the Affordable Care Act under attack every day by Republicans in Congress and by a president. And if I were governor, I would stand up and fight against that attack and do everything that I could to make sure that in Connecticut we keep our Access Health Connecticut program, just as Massachusetts has their own program that they created. We can have that in Connecticut if we have a governor who will focus her leadership on that. And I will stand up and support every measure that will bring us forward and closer to a single-payer healthcare system, because I think that would be great for our country's economy. It would be great for Connecticut's economy. Companies in the UK and France and Germany compete more effectively against American companies because they don't have to pay for healthcare for their employees. I think we should have Medicare for everyone from birth to the grave. And I will support any good measure to get us closer. Because right now, Congressman Courtney and Congressman Larson have a measure in the United States Congress to lower the age of Medicare so that you can buy in at a younger age. Senator Murphy is working on a bill to move us in the direction of single payer. And I like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders' plans So if I'm in a leadership role, I will do everything in my power to support initiatives to provide for good health care for everyone in our state, in our country. And I want to say a word about the opioid crisis, because more than 900 people have lost their lives to opioid addiction. And it's very important that we look at additional revenue streams, which, by the way, could help opioid addiction and prevent it. It's important to support legalization of marijuana, because if you look at the Colorado experience, there are fewer deaths from opioid addiction. So there's actually a public health benefit, and we can increase revenue in our state. And it's important because all the states around us have either done it or are moving in that direction. So thank you so much for your attention today. It's been great meeting all of you, and I look forward to your questions when we have the opportunity to interact later. Thank you so much.
Well, I'd ask you to take a look